Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today. Carasoft Technology would like to welcome you to our ServiceNow Federal Tech Talk, Cloud Transformation Powering DoD Missions. At this time, I'd like to hand the floor over to our speakers. Team, the floor is all yours.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. We're the ServiceNow team. I'll go around and do quick introductions and then jump into some content we have today and then take questions at the end. I'm Shamira. I'm at ServiceNow. I am a product manager for our US Gov Clouds, the GCC, the Government Community Cloud, and NSC, our National Security Cloud. Pete?
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining. My name is Pete Luongo. I lead our solutions consulting group within Federal here at ServiceNow. So I've got purview over Intel, DoD, as well as our civilian business. So I can talk a little bit about kind of what our customers are using ServiceNow for, and hopefully can share a little bit about those use cases with all of you today. And with that, Dave.
Yeah, thanks, Pete. My name is David Paradin. I'm with the Office of the CISO Field Security Team. My role is to basically enable customers to understand our cloud security posture, but also, help them manage through their ATO processes and understand what are the nuances in terms of onboarding their actual ServiceNow instances. So, thanks for having me.
Thank you all for being here. We'll start off by going over a ServiceNow overview and some of the key DoD focus areas. All right, Pete, over to you.
Great. Thank you. This is great. We're actually all in the same location, so it makes it a little bit easier for us to do the handoff instead of multiple Zoom pictures. So I know it's a rarity on these live telecoms, but it's nice to see. So one thing we did want to start off with is really, what is ServiceNow? I know a lot of folks are familiar with ServiceNow as an IT help desk or ticketing system. That's sort of where we got our roots. We started in ITSM and making sure that you could get to those ticketing things. At this point, though, after 15 years in business, we have done a lot more. So really the core of ServiceNow is the entire platform. You see the slide here where the intelligent platform for end-to-end digital transformation. What that does is really gives that platform foundation. IT ticketing is one solution area and not all of it, right? We do more than that. So if you look kind of across this, that middle layer where it says the Now platform, that's the fundamental piece of ServiceNow that every customer gets regardless of which solution you're using. That piece allows for automation, data management, AI, and ML, really kind of the fundamentals that build that. And then everything on top of that is built on top of it. Our creator workflows is our low-code use case where you can build anything that is custom or mission-oriented. And we'll talk about some of those that DoD has implemented shortly. But that allows you to really build something that's fundamental to your mission, your use case, because no out-of-the-box vendor provider will give you those use cases. But then we do provide some kind of prepackaged solutions that are similar to every company, industry, or federal agency. That's our customer workflows, or industry workflows, or employee workflows. If you think about employee workflows, that's things like onboarding a new hire, offboarding a departing employee, doing a change of station, doing something like that for government where you're doing TDY. All of those functions can fit in our employee workflow system and then be kind of expanded out with our creator workflows, because each of these building blocks does tie together. And really fundamental to all this is the ability to tie into any of your existing platforms. So we've got access to third-party data, whether it's Oracle, Workday, PeopleSoft, any of the underlying tools that you have in your environment today can be plugged into ServiceNow. So you get that data, you get value from the investments you've already made, and then you can really transform that using our digital transformation platform to kind of move that into other areas. So this is where that's a very, very quick overview of what ServiceNow does as a platform. But I wanted to sort of level set, because what DoD is doing with cloud and ServiceNow is much more than just an IT ticketing and help desk system. So that's what we really wanted to start with, that. Because while some of you may be familiar with that, I know that is not one of the more common things that you hear a lot about. So, all right. This is the next slide. And so for this audience here, I mean, how is DoD seeking to transform? They really want to do some of what we talked about. They've got to modernize their legacy processes. They've got to protect their environment, ecosystem infrastructure. There is and has been a move to the cloud across DoD for quite some time. And now it's not just moving to the cloud, but now it's extracting more value from the cloud and making sure it's secure to then kind of, handle those threats from different nation state actors or different threat vectors that are coming in. So really what you've got to do is make the most out of your investments in IT, give efficiencies to your people, and drive that talent so that you can recruit new talent, retain the talent you have, and give them a solid consumer-grade working experience so that they can do what they need to do to get that mission done, right? The mission of the DoD is to protect our borders, secure our assets in the world, protect our warfighters. It is not to just run IT systems for the sake of running IT systems. And ServiceNow really believes that we can meet those mission goals by really cleaning up the back end. without rip and replace big legacy 20-year, new systems built. It's something that sits in that workflow layer to really transform it, but give you the assets, give you the value of your data, help you set up for things like AI and generative AI and what you're doing. Really make sure you can meet your mission needs with the data and the assets you have with a platform that rides on top of that. One thing to call out here, and I know David's going to talk about it shortly, is that we have invested heavily in the federal government, and we are making sure that we can really meet the needs from a security and compliance perspective. We operate at every compliance level within the federal government. We meet that for DoD, and we also do it for the intelligence community. So with that, I'll turn it over to David. Let him talk a little bit about kind of our compliance posture for you.
Thanks, Pete. So before I start in terms of describing our respective cloud services, there's a misconception that is pretty common. I've had conversation with customers describing the ServiceNow platform, and a lot of times they think that we're essentially, an infrastructure as a service. And so where does ServiceNow essentially fit in this, cloud model? If I go to the next animation, you'll see that we functionally operate as a SaaS. So we're authorized FedRAMP High or DoD IL4 or DoD IL5 or NSC and GC respectively. We actually have the official authorization to function as a SaaS. But sometimes customers can also associate us as a PaaS. But I wanted to really just address the misconceptions that customers can actually control their environment, but that's not the case. So if you can take a look at this image, just be rest assured that we actually operate as a SaaS officially, but you can also bundle this in as an actual PaaS. Now, the reasoning or the reasons for protecting data in our cloud, customers or government agencies, they have requirements to make sure that they have the appropriate controls in place. And there's various levels when it comes to protecting specific types of data. For IL4, we have CUI data that needs to be protected, but also with IL5, that's the same situation. But what's more specific or unique about IL5 protection in this case is the fact that we're really talking about protecting national security systems data. So that's the main difference between the two clouds in this context. There's about 9 different controls between the two environments, but they both have their specific function. Now, when we're talking about eligibility criteria and things of that that sort, you're really talking about who is basically eligible to be hosted in these respective environments. For the Department of Defense, you will most likely see customers mainly in IL4 and IL5, but for non-federal agencies or non-DoD entities, they will be hosted in FedRAMP High instances in this case. And a lot of times, how do we access or how do customers access these various environments? So for IL4, and as well as for IL5, you must originate from the NIPRNet. Otherwise, there will be a series of whitelisting, processes and steps that you have to take as the mission owner to make sure that your users are able to access those instances. Now, here's I like this slide very much in regards to the differences between GCC and NSC. I won't go through every one of them, but the main thing I wanted to point out is the target customers. So for GCC, it does allow for non-DoD entities to operate in that environment. For NSC, it's strictly for the Department of Defense, and there's lots of regulations as well as mandates that obligate ServiceNow to enforce those respective controls in this place or in this context. If you were wondering what's the differences in terms of the architecture between GCC and NSC, the third bullet there. So ServiceNow GCC is hosted in ServiceNow's cloud. However, for NSC, this is basically a full stack implementation inside of Microsoft Azure. But by and large, we're still using the NIST-based control framework, more specifically NIST 853 Rev 4. We're looking to go to Rev 5 next year, but essentially the main differences here in terms of the actual architecture is where is the respective components are hosted. GCC is in ServiceNow natively. NSE is being hosted inside of Microsoft Azure. And with that, I will hand this over to Shamir.
Thank you, David. Hi, everybody. So that was a really great overview from David about the different types of clouds that we have at ServiceNow for the US government, and trying to, meet the needs for the data and the right compliance levels that you have. And like Pete said, having you not need to worry about the infrastructure, the operations, and starting to do more of the workflows and enabling solutions for your end users, your employees, your customers, et cetera, without having the operational overhead of a self-hosted on-premises instances. So GCC has been around for about 5 years in a couple of different iterations, and it's familiar to most of y'all. So it is authorized at FedRAMP High and IL4 for the DoD. We have a separate carved out section of GCC that, like David said, is only connected to the NIPRNet. And this has been available to our DoD customers for a while. But I wanted to draw your attention and focus a little bit of today's talk on our most recently launched offering for our DoD customers. And this is the National Security Cloud. And it is truly a SaaS offering with the same level of access and user experience that our commercial customers of ServiceNow have. So we've built a purpose-built cloud and authorized at IL5. And ready for you to do all of the wonders of the ServiceNow ecosystem, the workflows, the applications, whether that's building your own or leveraging the ones that we have out of the box in this cloud that was, again, purpose-built for the DoD. It was recently launched as of March 1st. So wanting to kind of get some awareness of this out there, and then answer any questions you'll have as well. So I guess the first thing to understand is, with the move to the National Security Cloud, it is providing you really a completely isolated and separated cloud that has the entire ServiceNow software and hardware stack replicated in there. So, as we launch new innovation and new capabilities for the ServiceNow platform and products, we will, continually be adding to the National Security Cloud, enabling you to have the latest and greatest, including our family releases, as well as, new capabilities like generative AI to come. Now, this entire cloud is, like I said, has its boundary, and we do have all the services that are in there exclusive to the customers in the National Security Cloud. Now, what does this enable? It enables you to be more agile, right? To have more sort of budget and time that would typically be focused on operational maintenance of self-hosted instances. And now we could sort of pivot to really using the power of, a SaaS platform and having, the latest upgrades and the latest patching to mitigate risk, and then have the confidence in ServiceNow's maintenance of this cloud at the levels that are mandated by the DISA cloud security requirements. So there's a lot of value to be got by using NSE, and we're really excited to bring this to our customer base, and then see the different use cases sort of get built on top of the National Security Cloud. A really quick peek into the architecture. We're not going to go into this in a lot of detail, but like Dave said, we built it on top of the US government cloud from Microsoft Azure, also authorized at IL5. And so we're sitting kind of on top of that. So we're using their infrastructure as a service. Customers will not see the Azure components, except for maybe in some cases of like migration of data at the start. Besides that, you should only be seeing the ServiceNow portal and you're interacting through those IP addresses and URLs that were provided to you. So again, controlled access via the NIPRNet, no other customers except for DoD in there. And again, there's really a big team at ServiceNow that has worked to launch this and continues to maintain it over time. So that's kind of what I wanted to kind of focus on a little bit in my section. And then I was going to, Dave is really excited about the PA.
Actually, yeah, I wanted to kind of basically inject the fact that this is actually, unprecedented in terms of being able to have a rather long-standing ATO. So we were able to secure our PATO until June of 2026, which is pretty cool in my opinion, because I cannot tell you how many times myself or Shamira or Pete, hey, when is I see that the authorization is about to expire. What's the update? What's the update? Well, now we can actually not have those sort of like inquiries bombarding our compliance or our cloud assurance team. So just wanted to kind of throw a plug in there. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks for calling that out. Always nice to have a longer timeline. So that's all we had in terms of content. So please keep the questions coming, but I did have kind of some questions to ask. I'll ask David and Pete to come up here, and then I will be the question asker.
Okay. All right. I'm going to move off of this slide if we
Okay.
can, so that we can just sort of, yep, there we go.
Okay.
And Shamira's got a few questions for us that obviously, so we can have a dialogue about, share that we thought might be interesting to most of the audience. But as you do, please use the Q&A function and ask others.
Yeah, please. All right. So first question is, as you all both worked with the DoD for a while, what has been the typical like barrier to cloud up, in your years past?
I can go first.
Sure. Go for it.
This is a layup for this. I mean, for this topic, but essentially from my perspective, adoption into the cloud, it means a lot of things to folks, right? So, essentially, understanding, do they have approval to go into the cloud? So that's really a barrier that's overlooked. And it becomes quite apparent that if you don't have those appropriate authorizations or approvals in place, before you know it, you're back to square one and their frustration sets in. Another thing is just basically aligning internal technologies, what sort of applications you have, integrations that might be in scope. So those sort of like, those buckets, if you will, they have to be accounted for. So proper planning and making sure that there's due diligence, being had in this case is always a good first step in terms of getting over those barriers as quickly and as efficiently as possible. But
yeah, I agree. I mean, I think that makes sense from a, especially when we're thinking about compliance. I'd say the other piece that we see is also process changes. Whether you're moving to an IaaS cloud, an Azure, AWS, GCP, or you're moving to a SaaS offering like this, there are definitely process changes, whether that is on the back end of how you manage things, whether that is how you manage your alerting and your incident response processes. Kind of all of those changes need to go into and be planned for. You get greater time back in terms of focusing on your mission, because you don't have to manage everything below the stack, but then you've got to adjust, like, all right, great, I don't have to manage that, but I need to get alerted by that cloud provider. I need to understand that. So I think those are some of the big things that really drive some of the movement to cloud and how you can get there. I think the value you see in cloud is really after you've made the shift, and then you start to realize that operational value, because it is an IT project to get there in the beginning. And so as long as you understand that there is not a return on day one, but a return on, day 90 or day 180, that's really where you start to look at it.
Thank you for sharing.
Yep.
All right. So my next question is regarding success stories you've seen over the years, right? ServiceNow has quite a significant DoD customer base, and you've seen customers sort of different flavors. What are some takeaways from those successes in cloud?
Yeah, first, I'll take this one. Sure. I will start by saying, I mean, every branch of the military in DoD, as well as the fourth estate, is all using ServiceNow today. So that is where you've seen some of the capabilities, and many of you might have it behind the scenes and not even know about it. But it is something that's out there today. One of our kind of more popular use cases that I'm particularly proud of is our ARM. It's called ARMA. It's the Army Maintenance Application. It is built on ServiceNow. And if you remember, I talked earlier about customer workflows. What this is used for is really used for the maintenance of housing on base. So when a soldier deploys, they might deploy and their significant other, family members, spouse, loved one, whatever you want to call it, is home. And so rather than having that service member worrying about, hey, the toilet's broken, hey, there's mold in the garage because of a flood, the roof is leaking, in base provided housing, that process used to take weeks to get those things fixed, multiple phone calls, no real clear sort of approach to get that done. They ran a pilot about 2 years ago on one of the bases, and they were able to roll this application out so that a spouse of a service member can take a picture of a problem, a leaking toilet, a leaking roof, whatever it might be. Take a picture, submit it through a portal. And rather than taking weeks to get responses back, it now takes, a day, 2 days to not only get a response back, but then get a plan of action to correct it. And they're expanding that to more bases now across the US. They've rolled this out further because of the success. The amount of money saved, as well as the satisfaction on the maintenance of Army housing, has been tremendous. And that has obviously a direct impact on people as well as our warfighters, whether they're home or not, having to not worry about it. So that's an area where, it is what you think of a very simple use case, maybe not mission focused, but it allows that service member to focus on their mission when they're deployed, because they're not worrying about, being able to fix something at home that they would normally take care of. And so that really helps to drive the mission. We have numerous others around mission workloads and capabilities and whatnot. Obviously not all of them are for public dissemination, but that's sort of where I do think of, if you think of what is any problem, process, pain point, workflow that can really be automated and simplified. I think of things when you're departing the military and you've got to turn in all of your assets. That's a huge process, very heavy and paper dependent. That's something that can be automated. There's a lot out there that you can do. So I wanted to share that one just because of the value to our service members, but also because it kind of demonstrates the capabilities of ServiceNow. Anything you want?
I think you nailed it.
All right.
All right, David, a question for you. There is a lot of, I guess, worry about the paperwork involved, especially moving to SaaS, from more traditional models. So what would be your advice to our DoD, customer base, of kind of navigating that, and any tips?
Yeah. First of all, try to identify who your authorizing official is and who is your ISM or your ISSO, right? Those are the security officers of your agency or your organization. Having a conversation early in the process really helps, decouple a lot of delays, right? Because if you do things a little bit slightly out of order without the proper authorization or approvals, or just getting to communicate what you intend to, how to use the platform, you're just delaying the inevitable in terms of, all right, well, this is going to take, maybe 8 months instead of 2 months, right? So my suggestion is to get buy-in from the stakeholders, contacting your security officers respectively, but then also talk with your account team and allow them to help you to compile as much documentation as possible in preparation, towards onboarding your entire community to the ServiceNow platform. So preparation, and just being a lot, being more communicative with your security agency or your security officers respectively. So just be prepared that there will be some, things that you have to go ahead and get authorized or approved. And there will be some peer review, right? So architecture will come up a lot, security requirements. What's your data governance model? And so make sure that you bring all that to the table before you move forward with any sort of implementation.
Thanks, David. It's great. Great advice. And I think we've seen this play out in a number of our customers. So my last question, I think we'll wrap this up a little bit early if there's no other questions, is NSC's launch. We're really excited about that. Obviously unlocks a lot more use cases for us and from the IL5 standpoint in the SaaS model that we're want to get to all our customers. What are you excited about, the next year or so, and seeing customers in the DoD adopt NSC?
Well, I just like the fact that, I'm enthused about, just the broad adoption to begin with. We've had customers in our cloud for quite some time. And so now we have the opportunity to grow with the customer, right? So, Pete just mentioned in terms of leveraging the platform for digital transformation and being able to streamline a lot of the processes. But from a security perspective, my team, as well as, other, folks on the compliance side, we're basically locked hands, or, we're locking arms in terms of making sure that we're protecting the customer as best as possible, but also enabling our customers to leverage the platform securely, showing them best practices. What are the data governance model that I mentioned earlier, right? And just being over communicating in terms of, all right, these patches are coming out, or here's a new capability within the platform, like say, for instance, adaptive authentication. I'm not sure if anyone knows this, but this is out of the box in terms of being able to do what's called step up or step down authentication to be able to comply with your agencies or your organization's sort of policies. So I'm enthused in the fact that we're able to, kickstart our security campaign with customers in terms of enabling them, giving them best practices that I mentioned before, so that way they're more equipped and more empowered to secure their instances.
So, I mean, for me, what I'm really excited about is really the level of use cases and the benefits that we can provide to the DoD, to our service members deployed at home, wherever it may be, to really meet the mission of DoD. I talked about the ARMA example. There are many others, but what really excites me is that if we can simplify people's lives, if we can bring data that they've already got stored somewhere and kind of bring that forward and automate it, really to make kind of their life easier. We hear all about budget threats. We hear all our budget concerns within the DoD. We hear all about, the escalating threats from other nation states. We look at things like Ukraine and the other areas around the world and kind of the unrest. DoD is in all those areas, right? Whether they're just, doing analysis or they're doing actual boots on the ground. They're doing everything for our country, and being able to kind of help support that in a way that really removes some of the burden on them, right? If you can make your job easier to put boots on the ground, if you can make your job easier to do humanitarian rescue missions, if we can do any of that, whether it's through asset maintenance, deployment management, logistics, if it's through supply chain management, all of those pieces can be run through ServiceNow. And you've got systems to do that, but really kind of take advantage of those systems, elevate the data up, expose it to the right users, and then automate it through the system. It makes your jobs a lot easier. And that is something where, I think these siloed systems on-prem today are able to be tied together, because we can tie into an on-prem system, we can tie into another cloud vendor, bring that together for a user and for a workflow in a mission-based scenario. And that to me is what's exciting about kind of, what ServiceNow can do, our commitment to the federal government, our commitment to DoD across every impact level, including the classified environment, is really something that I think we've got a lot of ability to help with, and I'm excited about that opportunity.
Oh, well said, Pete. All right, that's a wrap from us. Heather, thank you for hosting us. We appreciate it.
Are there any other
Any
questions out there?
questions? Folks can come off mute. We're
Yeah.
happy to take them live as well. And if not, reach out after. We're your resource, and we're here to answer any questions or have follow-up conversations as needed.